So you have 3D weariness. Yeah, okay. Well, that's a good. That just shows that you've grown also, and that some of what gave you pleasure in the past is kind of a trifling today, or there, you're on a deeper level. I mean, it just happened. It's just really normal that the little things that used to make us happy don't in the future, unless they are very deeply rooted, deep benefit, deep value experiences. So it's pretty normal, I think, to have the thrill gone about this and that, and then over time, I think it sounds like there's fatigue. Like, I'm tired of living in third density. Period. I'm tired of this whole thing, and there's nothing here I really want so much. I think it may be, it might lead you to a time of deeper self-reflection about now what. The world is changing. September or whatever, my family is changing, and they perhaps will be less with me. What do I want now? What really would make me sad, other than leaving here? Yeah. Well, I think that a lot of the things, I mean, there really are many things that are kind of trifles in the big picture that at a certain time in our life or certain times we really do enjoy, but then we get to something deeper and it just doesn't cut it anymore. It's like I could watch You Bet Your Life with Groucho Marx, from the 50s on YouTube, right? They're like, I can find channels with 50 episodes. And I've watched dozens of them and really felt a lot of value, frankly. I mean, it sounds silly, but actually I got a lot of value from kind of tuning into the 50s mindset, as well as his intelligence, as well as his dialogue with guests, and the cross section of humanity that would come on the show, and the humor obviously was great. But I could get into another state of mind where it just seems like a petty trifle nothing for me to watch You Bet Your Life for half an hour. In a certain mood, a Band-Aid would work. And in another mood, it's just a little thing, and it doesn't help at all. In a deeper, at a more grave, or more gravity, or more serious, or more sober position of mind or condition of mind, that little trifling pleasure, which could be, I've watched hours and hours, and it's thoughtful, it's entertaining, it's funny, it's educational, it's thoughtful, it's heartwarming. And in another state of mind, which is more serious, it's a nothing to sit for half an hour and watch that. That's what I'm saying. And I think that's what happens is the mind, we get more serious. It's a serious matter living on Earth. It's kind of a challenge. It's kind of a big deal, having an incarnation. And there are times when we're not heavy, where the mind is sort of, follow the bouncing ball, follow the yellow brick road. I just watched The Wizard of Oz again, and there are times when lesser trifles, lesser trifles please us, and then there are times when the mind gets into something more serious about the incarnation of deeper values, and what used to be okay, what used to be pleasurable is nothing. It's just like, making chocolate or making this or that. Those things that you've enjoyed could become zero. Not that they're bad, but it's not touching a deep level, this deeper level of what I am, that I'm feeling in some greater way right now. That kind of view. And then I think we just have to, give that depth of feeling its due and try to understand it without self-blame, of course. Yeah. Well, right, because that's what you said, I just want to get out of here. And then you could say, I feel so bored. I think under bored is sad. I feel so sad. I mean, I feel this, and I think it's called existential angst. It's a metaphysically caused or generated emotional mental experience that is very normal for wanderers. Very, very. It's, the chapter in my book called The Wanderer's Alienation. It's normal. It's just normal. And in that chapter, there was an experience. I did counseling with a woman whose husband discovered he was a wanderer, and they were both very spiritual, open-minded people. This was a long time ago. And after he came to that recognition, with which his wife was in full support, because she was very New Age also, she said something like, we had to train him to get interest, to develop some interests again. He had to learn to have interests in his life. It was a strange way of talking about it. Like, after he came to that spiritual realization about his identity and home and path, future, destiny, he simply lost all interest being here. It was just, he was just waiting to leave, because he knew glory. And I've had many experiences out of body like that. And I'm very familiar with that view of, it's like in meditation, when the meditation is joyous, I don't want to stand up. I don't want to get up. I want to stay here forever. And people with out of body experience or near death have had that. That's the same. And wanderers awakening or wanderers deepening our awareness, or broadening our awareness of who we are and what the hell's going on here, can get to that very easily, and then have a hard time moving from that back to an engaged, satisfying life on Earth. So maybe you're just growing up. Yeah, I mean, it's good to know the source of our dis-ease. Whenever we're unhappy about something, or feel the mood turns blue or heavy or dark or dim or thick, it's very good to know what's going on here with me, and get through the what's going on. I don't understand this, because knowing, is a part of healing. Understanding is a part of healing, as Ra always says. So the deeper the self-understanding of this, the more healing you'll experience, and the more well-being in this condition you'd feel. So I would also think that, it is deep disappointing at a deep level, I think, to have one's retreat despoiled by the barbarians. Yeah, I mean, I see that here. Whenever usually there are no hotel guests at all, other than me and the other boarders in the other part of the property. So usually there's nobody but the people who live here. But when there's a big group of guests over a weekend or something, there's always little cigarette butts and little pieces of garbage on the ground in some places. And they just come here and they shit on their feet. They just shit at their feet. And that's who they are. And, that's 3D human. 3D human repeater. That's 3D repeater psychology behavior. They just can't help themselves, or they just don't know better. They're here and they're having a happy time. It's a lovely place. And they shit on their shoelaces. And they don't know anything about it. And then, when they get some diseases in 50s and 60s and they're on medications, they don't think about that either. And they don't know cause and effect. And they don't even know that they're enjoying a beautiful environment and unwittingly despoiling it at the same time. And with nary a thought. That's who they are. And wherever they go, that's who they will be. Because they haven't changed. They have no thought of changing that. They don't even know what that is. They don't even perceive it. If I say, pick up that butt, or, look at this, what you've just done, they'd be angry at me. I mean, who wants to live in a world with those people? Who likes those people? They don't even like each other. They don't even like each other. So who wants to live in a world of people who, make a mess regularly, more or less, all the time, and they don't even like each other? What kind of a place is this? So, humanity is very sick. Very sick. Actually. They basically live all the lies and control mechanism structures that they're commanded from negative leadership. Year after year, century after century, continent after continent, all over. And have no, and actually what really struck me the last week was all of the fundamental truths of human being, human nature, the purpose of existence here, the path, the future, God, the creation, their destiny, the way of living, the whole purpose and meaning of their life. All those issues, they don't want to hear. They actually don't want all the truth, whatever the truth is. I don't know all the truth. All the truths, all the knowing associated with these essential, fundamental realities of who they are and what they're doing here in this world in the future, all of those truths, they actually don't want. They actually don't want. Because if they wanted, they'd have it. Their capacity is no different than ours. They just don't use it. They don't want it. In fact, if we tell them these things, they will fight with us. Even if we take it out of religion and take it out of mysticism, they don't even want the discussion. That's very sick. The fundamental truths of their being, they're all set against knowing or listening or considering. That's really a problem. To me, that's very sick. It's almost like, I'm living a life and every 5 steps I fall down and bruise myself. And somebody says, hey man, you're falling and bruising yourself. Maybe you should, do this or do that, or that's really bad. And then if you say that to me, I just brush you off and keep walking and keep falling every 5 steps. Or I simply... my condition doesn't get any better, and I'm angry at you for even pointing it out. That's really where they're coming from. That's very sick, metaphysically. Right. Well, I mean, that points, yes, I think that's often true. That points to a very big problem, which is instruction, real spiritual instruction. Which doesn't mean from me, it means from anyone about anything essential. Real instruction from anyone about anything essential, in general, is seen as a threat to their sense of self. They don't want to be told what's what. They don't want to learn. And the reality is, 3D repeaters don't listen. They just don't listen. They don't want to listen. If they listened, they'd be learning. Of course, their capacity is, boundless as ours, but they don't want to listen, and so they don't listen, so they don't learn, and so they don't know. But listening and learning is for them taken as an insult or an assault or something threatening. So it's not only that they don't know the essentials of who they are and what they're doing here and the life they're living, and they actually don't want those truths, but they feel threatened by hearing. I mean, that's why people take religion. There's a real subtle dance going on here between service to self, leadership, deception, and unpolarized masses compulsion for self-deception. Machiavelli said something like, the deceiver will always find those willing to be deceived. So Orion and the negative leadership has found an entire planet of souls who are willing to be deceived. This is a very big problem. And if you bring that up to their attention, or you point out, questions like, what are you, and what is this life, and what about the future, and what's the purpose here? They feel threatened and angry. They can't listen. They don't want to listen. They feel they shouldn't be lectured. They feel, affronted. If anyone presumes to know more than them on essential matters, or presumes to teach them or share views on essential matters that they don't know, that's seen as a threat or as an aggressive act against them. And then even if they do listen, like Ross said, 10 people hear 10 different views or come out with 10 different interpretations. This is a very sick group. And to me, I'm not saying bad, I'm saying sick. And yet, walking among, humanity in the main, in the masses, in the cities, in the places of large population, I actually realize that at a physiological level, I have reaction. But their auras impinge on mine, as it does for all, as mine does to them. And the incompatibility is painful. It's painful. It's like living in a group of, in a tribe of dogs in the forest. If I'm walking around with the dogs in the forest, there's something wrong here. Even if they accept me, this is very, the visceral, some of the physiological energy, visceral basis of the wanderer's alienation. Back to that. And that will only get worse. And I realize, guys like Gautama and Nityananda, the reason they didn't live forever, or they didn't try to maintain their body to 120 or something, which I assume they could have done, they let the body degenerate because they don't want to be here that long, because they shouldn't be. That's not what their existence or service or path is all about, living here indefinitely. It's wrong. It shouldn't be. It should be just for a certain period and then it ends. So, to me, all of those factors are in play in our daily experience and mine. And there's the only way of escaping that is to basically live in a place or have a life where you have very limited contact with people. And, do your thing. And when the life is over, there'll be final release. And that's it. And no need to get attached to, stuck in self-blame or bitterness or cynicism or hopelessness or self-pity or anything. All those things we don't have to get stuck in. But we're living here. And as we mature and feel more and know more, the nature of the misfit, of the incompatibility becomes clearer and more tangible and more visceral. The visceral basis of it becomes clear too. So that's what I reflect like that. And that's all become much more clear to me in the last 6 months, I'd say. Well, I think what you may find is that under any patterns of previously having forced yourself to do it or wanted to do it, you may have a deep reservoir of not wanting to do any of that and not wanting to be here at all. That's a kind of bitter truth to be processed. Yeah, it's a stressful world. And it's a hard planet to live on when, even or particularly knowing we're far from home. There's no place like home, like Dorothy said. So there's a difference between a piece of art or a story or media presentation produced with the express intention of mind controlling the viewers, and those that are then used by those who wish to do mind control, who then modify and tweak and adjust and isolate and distill out elements of that dramatic production for their work, for their mind controlling. So there's a certain thing going on here called moral or metaphysical reversal. And so the negatives often take something that really is very pure and then turn it into something very sick, that are really shocking, that are hitting deep levels of the mind that people don't realize, that is contributory to the basic psychological dis-ease of humanity that increasingly in the world today. To make a public spectacle and a public cause celeb about it is social engineering. And if you look at, I mean, what I'm saying is that the lies and the deception and the grotesquerie and the bizarro nature of what's being taught to humanity, or some very, very subtle mind control that's been extended into the mainstream media, the mind control weaponization of modern culture. Mind control weaponization of modern culture. What I'm saying is that there's a major stream of crazy making, driving humanity insane, or making people unable to tell truth from fiction, or right from wrong, good from bad, up from down, what is from what isn't, the real from the false. There is a serious stream in modern culture and media of making people incapable of discerning real from false, and it's repugnant, it's grotesque, and it's a very sick kind of assault of humanity's reason and capacity for knowing. That's going on in the world today. That's happening on television every time you see. That's what's going on television. That's bringing Satan to the masses, as Anton LaVey said. That's really what they're doing. Yes, but I mean, to live in a world where that's going on is repugnant. It's awful. I mean, it's terrible. It's disgusting. It's harmful. It's sorrowful. I want to cry. I want to shout. I want to rage. I want to leave. This kind of thing. Well, Heraclitus nailed it in a way I've never heard before. He said basically, they take the crowd for their teacher. That the ordinary folks in the world who are not seeking, not really polarized, right? They're not really evil, and they're not really virtuous. They're overall, kindly enough, maybe, I guess, but they're not evil, but they're not on the positive path either. He said they take the crowd as their teacher. This is so deep because it really means that there's a self-perpetuating quality to human culture and seeking, where they look to each other for guidance on how to think and how to live. They look to each other. And ultimately, the whole group is looking primarily to human authorities to determine what their values ought to be, or how to think, or how to act. Authorities like, television and media personalities, government officials, religious authorities, the parents and their friends, who get their opinion from the same authorities. Where else? And so it's a kind of a contained system where all they pretty much feel safe in believing or accepting is what the others do. And so they don't want to stand alone. They don't want to stand apart. They don't want to stand outside. And they really do think that because most people are doing it, it must be a good way to be. If, they take the crowd as their teacher, they really do. Yes. It's very animal group reflexive or instinctive. Very much so. Well, it's the orange ray drop down. Don't ever underestimate the significance of what Ra talked about as the orange ray kind of position of general human consciousness. That humanity, third, dimensional consciousness, yellow ray, first, second, third chakra developed, at least, to a large extent has dropped down or is living from an orange ray perspective, which is basically self-centered and body identified, and emotion, basically identified with the material world, my body, my feelings, my thinking, personality, and my place in society. And that's all and nothing more. But particularly have checked out of thoughtful concerns about society in the group back to a kind of, I say, low IQ narcissism. It's basically a kind of simple-minded self-centeredness. Not evil, not virtuous, not, like an animal totally, of course, but not really making use of the potentials of mind very much at all, the higher potentials of mind. And not really that caring about society or the collective. Really pretty much caring about me and mine only. That's orange ray drop down. And that's one reason why they don't listen. They can't listen. They have rejected listening for so long that they're now unable to listen to a large extent. And therefore, listening, just if you don't expect the unexpected, you can't learn. Heraclitus said. So they can't learn because they're not willing to discover the new. They're pretty much, only, there's all this push on new, fast, easy, safe, fun, as, advertising slogans. They always want the new, but it's not really new. It's really just the same way of thinking about life, or the same materialism, the same focus on body and personality and emotions and feeling good, happy today. And so, but in terms of knowing who they are and their life and their purpose and what's going on in society, they don't want to hear it because they've rejected hearing for so long that it pains their ears to hear too long. They feel pained and grieved to listen too long to what's outside the matrix of social assumptions and what they've been told by authorities and what their friends are believing too. So taking the crowd as their teacher, they really don't want, and they're not actually very capable of taking anyone else or anything else as their teacher, as a source of teaching or learning. That's a real serious condition. And so that's the basis of prolonged 3D cycle repeating. And so we live here with them. And yet there are beautiful souls here and there, and we meet good wanderers, and there are good folks, and, there's beauty all over the place. True. There's glory everywhere. God is here too, of course. But at the level of personal self and feelings and community, we don't really have anything nowhere near what we had before we came here. We have the most pale experience of community love, meaning group love, which doesn't mean sexual love. It means we all love each other. We're all happy. We all want to share. We're all open to appreciating, our life, our shared life in God's house. That's nowhere to be found here, actually. Only with a few people now and then. And year after year after year after year, living like that, most wanderers, feel withered up or dried out prune, And so Ra talked about this. I've sent you the link. It's searching for the word horror, Horror, like Colonel Kurtz in Apocalypse Now, saying at the end, horror, horror, much deeper voice than me, and that's very deep, very the horror or horribleness of the contradictions here. And Don said, "Can you tell me why Earth will be fourth density positive instead of fourth density negative after the cycle is complete, since it seems that there's a greater negative population?" Very succinct presentation of how most wanderers look at humanity, thinking, oh, it seems like they're all negative, or so many are negative, or it's a negative society. No, it's mixed. Ross said, the Earth, 1723, the Earth seems to be negative. That is due to the quiet, shall we say, horror, which is the common distortion which those good or positively oriented entities have towards the occurrences which are of your space-time present. However, those oriented and harvestable in the ways of service to others greatly outnumber those whose orientation towards service to self has become that of harvestable quality. The great majority of your peoples will repeat their density, was the answer after that. And so the great majority, the great majority, which was what, 80%, 90%, probably something in there, will repeat their density. And so it's not that the Earth is negative or humanity is, actually. This is a mixed orientation group. And those oriented and then harvestable to 4D positive greatly outnumber those who are oriented service to self and harvestable. So that's the big deal. So number one, harvestable positive, goodly folks far outnumber those who are harvestable to 4D negative. But, those who are not harvestable to 4D negative are still running society, but they're service to self. So all human societies are run by service to self folks. That's really awful in a group of people who's basically not service to self, who are basically neutral, morally bland, morally undirected or non-oriented. That's a strange thing. And living here year after year after year after year and seeing this and being with this often leads to this sense of quiet horror. And the quiet is a kind of powerlessness, and the horror is a kind of shock. So it's impotent shock, solitary, private grieving, shocked consternation or confoundedness. That's really, to some extent, what wanderers go through after decades and decades and lives and centuries of being here. And the only way out of that really is, activation of fourth, fifth, sixth chakras. The way out is the way in. The way up is the way in, or expansive of all we're feeling. And that really can't be done very well with others. It's done much deeply alone. But then, alone, we, of necessity, will confront the depths of whatever pain we feel of this quiet horror at being here with these people who are not bad, but they really very seriously turn themselves against the truths of their being. That's a very and willingly support systems or social structures where they are controlled by deceptive, negatively oriented leadership. And they, I think some more and more people are coming to realize what's going on here, yes. But you still really do have 80% sleeping, it seems to me. I mean, I think all total, you probably have 5% of the population that is seriously service to self, and maybe 15% of the population that is service to other or positively oriented globally. And then 80% of the population who really is neutral. They really are, they just don't care about their morality. Naturally, they're not bad. Naturally, they're, if an old lady falls on the street, most people would go over and help to pick her up. But that's still not virtue. That's just common sense, or that's just, body sympathy. If somebody's in pain, there's some natural sense of they go over and help, but they don't talk to them very long, and they leave as soon as they can, generally. So, I don't think that my views are unreasonable. They sound hard-edged, but I don't think they're unreasonable at all. And there's no blame. Yeah, well, when you're living in the city, one comes to believe that the human world is the whole world. The natural world is not important anymore. There's decreasing recognition or sense of living within the natural world or the universal, the cosmic, looking up at the night sky, or the sky and the sun, the sky and the clouds and the sun. So cosmic life, universal life, and the natural kingdom, plants and animals, natural world, are no longer understood or felt as the environment for personal life. Everything is becomes the human world. The human world is the world, and that leads to, actually, I mean, it doesn't have to lead to orange ray drop down. People could be intensely social, like Greece. Ancient Greece, people were very social, meaning caring about the collective. I mean, more or less, at least there was a lot going on. So it doesn't have to lead to drop down, but it definitely leads to arrogance and a kind of bubble perspective, where the human is the all, and that comes down to me, the human, being the all that's worth caring about, and the human loses perspective, as you say, no longer seeing its place in a greater scheme of the natural and the universal, or the cosmic. And that's that. So, I mean, but we have to say that this is pretty damn good catalyst for us. This is damn good catalyst for soul evolution, particularly in the ways of wisdom. At least that's my view. Wisdom and love both. But, you couldn't get this kind of catalyst at home. You can't get it from watching from, higher dimensions, or coming in and going out. You can only get it by incarnation. And so I'm sure I'm going to have real deep wistfulness for the loss of the catalyst of 3D space-time and the incarnative cycle here after this is over. Well, yes, I mean, there absolutely is a community subgroup within the sixth density wanderers that have been on Earth a while, that are finishing wandering, and who are using this incarnative cycle, meaning our program contract for a certain number of lifetimes, or a certain length of years, really, in the human 3D incarnational coming and going, as the basis for the looking backwards becoming finished, and moving into seventh density and completing wandering. And there is a subgroup, I imagine, that's going to leave sixth density early. Or certainly, what's a few million years? Roth said their harvest a couple million years. That's really, really tiny, actually, based on their incarnational span. I mean, if the lifespan in fourth density is 90,000 years, what do you think it's going to be in sixth density? 90 million? Perhaps. So, I mean, that's serious matter. If ideal lifespan in 3D is 900, and fourth density is 90,000, which is 100 times more, and Ra has said that the catalytic action or experience in 3D space-time is about 100 times more than higher dimensions or fourth dimension, I forgot. So the lifespan, you see, what the hell is lifespan? Lifespan is a measure of space-time experiencing. Incarnative form-based, space-time form body, incarnate form body, length or duration or intensity of experiencing, of catalyst. And so if the catalyst is 100 times more here, we can say that that's why the lifespan is 100 times less than 4D. Then going from 4 to 6, this is like homeopathy, a high level dilution. So what's the further dilution of the intensity of catalyst from fourth to sixth density? Another 100, or how about 100,000? So that if catalyst is 100 times more intense in third density space time than 4, how about 10,000 times less intense in sixth density than fourth density? So then the lifespan would be 10,000 times more. Well, this is all, very, very poorly approximate, but something like that. Then the lifespan would be 10,000 times longer. So we go from 90,000 to what? 90 million? 900 million? So if their harvest is in 2 million and their lifespan is 90 million, that's really tiny. That's, 1/45th, 2%. So if my lifespan here is 90 years, 2% is what? A year and a half? 2 years? 1.8 years? Sotapanna. So with the achievement of Sotapanna comes the inevitable experience where the person will finish complete and perfect enlightenment in 7 lifetimes or less. So and it's not even 7 lifetimes necessarily on Earth. Well, I don't know about that, but I would say that if the lifespan, from 4th to 6th is correspondingly longer inversely to the intensity of catalyst, so not 100 but 10,000, and so, or whatever, we go from 90,000, it's really figurative. I mean, it's really experiential. It's qualitative more than quantitative. To say 90,000 versus 900 as the lifespan of 4th density versus 3rd density, ideally, it's really a qualitative statement, not a quantitative number. It's a quantitative number, obviously, but it really points to a qualitative quantum leap in experience where the sense of integrity of singleness of incarnation, or the integrity of experiential continuum in body, is correspondingly that much greater, and the catalyst is therefore, or by in association, that much less intense, or more harmonious, or more subtle. 4 to 6, so much more subtle, so much so-called longer. Ra said their harvest is only in 2 million years. For us, that's like 2 years. How about that? And how about this? That the 60 harvest on Venus of Ra's group, going from 6 to 7, may correspond, how about this, with the harvest or dimensional shift of Earth 3 to 4. How about that for a funny idea? How about that? The Ra's harvest from 6 to 7, which doesn't seem to be centered on Venus, but is clearly related to their activity in the solar system, in the octave, this octave, their harvest 6 to 7 is roughly contiguous in time with Earth's harvest 3 to 4. How about that? That's it. I've never heard of that before. Well, here's the point. Harvesting or dimensional shifting is done by the Logos, none else. The order comes from the top only, and everyone else fulfills their supportive function. So it's the logoic decision, and the logoic mind is pretty far beyond everybody who's below 8th density. The Guardians don't talk, so the Guardians may know because they're basically subsidiary, or they're allied to the Logos and the whole octave. But everybody below the Guardians won't know, and that's normal for dimensional shift. But I think the similitude, or the apparent correspondence of Ra's 6th density to 7th density harvest in, they said, I think 2 million years, which is for them perhaps, which is akin to us for about 2 years, if we're using the same mathematics, is perhaps then contiguous with the harvesting here, dimensional shifting here. That would make it a bigger deal for because they're upper level confederation groups. It's not that every confederation group is harvesting 6 to 7, but they're they're not tied to a planet as they were below 6th density. Meanwhile, when they say we're harvesting, I don't think they mean that the Syrian group and another group and another group. That's not the case, because they're groups that evolve to 6th density on planets outside the solar system are tied to the logoi of those octaves more than they'd be tied to the logos of this one. Now, it may be then, of course, that many sixth density groups are tied to the same logos because they, even if they grew up in other solar systems like Sirius or Pleiades or Arcturus or Andromeda, it is the same sub-logos that we're talking about, which is very possible. But it doesn't mean that all those planetary groups that are sort of extraplanetary at this point in sixth density necessarily have the gateway to intelligent infinity or dimensional shift opening at the same time. I wouldn't assume that. The only point is it may well be that the proximity of Ra's harvest from 6 to 7 is has a correspondence to the harvest of Earth humanity from 3rd to 4th density. That's all. And so there is a corresponding proximity, nearness, a related nearness of Ra's harvest from 6 to 7, from where they are now to their harvest time, to humanity's proximity in time from now to dimensional shift to 4. That's just an interesting point, that Ra harvesting 6 to 7 may be contiguous with Earth's harvest 3rd to 4th. Yes, and you can be sure that the teachers of Ra, like the Council of Saturn, knew exactly what they were doing when they okayed the naive interventions of Ra and other sixth density groups to planet Earth in the last 10,000, 20,000 years. They knew that allowing them to proceed with those plans would provide, very serious catalyst to speed those groups along to their harvest into 7th density. Yes, exactly. To let the student fall down because he wasn't as stable as he thought before, and only by falling down can he discover the, imbalances that need to be rectified. Well, you see, part of Gautama's non-worshipping or non-idealizing of the Devas was a view that in those higher dimensional realms, life, experience, existence is so pleasant, so happy, that they have minimal motivation. And just as Ra said, that the catalytic action is very pale, or very etiolated was the word, etiolated, to deprive a plant of light, to make pale, meaning white color, by depriving plants of light, like those little kind of noodle sprouts, those little kind of white bean sprouts that grow in basements with no light. They're white and funky looking, and they have a lot of water, but they're kind of weird. That's the difference between higher dimensional catalyst, which is so harmonious and subtle and gentle and lovely, versus the catalyst in 3D physical. So weak for making robust soul. And so Gautama was really saying, you see, Gautama was, he's a purist. And so he was saying the only worthy goal is freedom from becoming all avidya, ignorance, and all dukkha, suffering, and all grasping, tanha, and thirst, and from the whole realm of birth and death whatsoever, meaning the whole 7-dimensional reincarnative scheme. That's all he respected. That's very pure. He's a real purist there. Meanwhile, for people who don't want that or can't handle that, which is most everyone, virtue, panchasila, is enough. And for the monks, really, sotapanna is enough. Even though, he encouraged people to keep going. But the really only, it's like, life begins after 40. Really means life begins after the octave. The only worthy, life is dedicated to freedom from required samsaric reincarnation in the octave. That's a very, very high view, and really not applicable to nearly everyone down here on the ground. But for some sixth density, some advanced sixth density wanderers, it's a perfect teaching. Yes. Actually, there are two aspects of that inner association or inner union, integration, and sharing. One is what happens out of body at night on the astral, generally. And the other one is the fact that, at higher dimensional levels of our being now, we remain one with the sixth density group. I mean, those levels are not less active than this level. Those levels of our being now are in play now with their own experiential continuum, actually. That includes ours, but is greater than ours that we're unaware of. So that's an interesting thing. Thanks for being here today. And I enjoyed it a lot. And hope you're well. And talk to you next time. Okay. Good night.